Okay, today we're going to talk about how there's a lot of state workers, a lot of workers around Washington State that don't want Inslee's prick, and so they have a protest coming up. And stay tuned to find out more about it. Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Govern. Now, today we're going to be back in Washington State, the state of eternal lockdowns, and where Governor Inslee has decided that every state worker needs to get fired if they don't obey him. And it is no longer their body or their choice in this state, and Inslee is following through on that, supposedly here in October. Now, as a quick trigger warning to all those who only want to listen to Inslee and obey everything he says, this message and nothing I say here has been approved by the Ministry of COVID Compliance. And I just want to make sure, fair warning for anybody who proceeds. So the main thing I'm going to talk about is the October 3rd rally that's coming up. You see here in Hamilton Corners, they put it out on the billboard along I-5 down in Lewis County. And it's coming up on October 3rd in Olympia on the steps, the front steps there from 1 to 4. And it's essentially a medical freedom rally, no forced vaccinations. And it has really been co-sponsored by a lot of state employees who have jumped in and are going to be there from the ferry system, the state patrol, line workers, teachers, Department of Health even, Department of Ecology, L&I, all these other state employees that are anticipating that Inslee's going to fire them. And I'm going to make a point here real quick. The newspapers have actually not done anybody a service when they've been saying that it's about 8% of the state workforce that Inslee's essentially threatening to fire, because that's just simply the people that have applied for the medical exemption and then, of course, been rejected. Nearly all of them were rejected by the state, saying they don't have any accommodations. So the medical exemption was just a fake claim that the state had, probably to reduce, they think, some kind of liability. But nevertheless, this threat of firing is proceeding, and you have a relatively high concentration of people in frontline worker positions, like the State Patrol, like the line workers, and other jobs that actually have an impact on people who live in Washington State. So, of course, at this rally, I promise you, again, nothing that is said there is going to be approved by Inslee's Ministry of COVID Compliance, and I think it's important that that's pointed out, particularly when you have messages like this from state workers who have pretty strong opinions about what Inslee can do and why they really don't want him to come and tell them what to do with their own bodies. This is just a strange world we're living in, where this is going to be the issue that Inslee decides that Hillary's going to die on to basically purge the workforce of anybody that has the ability to think independently or think on their own. It really is an interesting situation. It's terrible if you're actually in these situations and your family's income depends on it, or perhaps if you're a line worker, it doesn't matter that much to you because you figure you can get the same job in other states that pays the same and your skill set's in high demand. But regardless, this is really producing crazy situations. Now, at the rally a couple weeks ago that photo was from, this was what it looked like, just the stage that they had. It was out on the grass, stand your ground, defend medical freedom. That was kind of the rally at the time. We had about 1,500 people there. This is just a couple photos that I took at that rally, and you can see, just looking from two different directions, how many people were there. It was roughly 1,500. There was quite a few people there, actually, and they were all state workers. When I asked from the stage to raise their hand if they were a state worker or married to one, that was most of that audience. And that's a fairly large number of people who work for the state in one capacity or another, and government one way or the other, and they're not happy with the situation and where it's going. And essentially, their argument comes down to kind of what's message here, which is just this idea that the state has put all this pressure on them. And I actually think in many ways the pressure has been counter. It's actually reduced people's desire to get the vax. They don't want it. They don't want the jab because they don't believe anything the state's telling them anymore after being shamed and threatened and bribed. And now they're going to lose their job over it. If it was so great, you wouldn't have to push it this hard. And so that's been the common theme that I hear frequently from people who, in addition to the ones that have religious or concerns or health concerns over it, it's been this real resistance to being forced to obey or submit to Inslee's will. And after all, he is king, and that's what they're doing, pushing it on everybody under the state of emergency. It's kind of overlapped, too, with a lot of concerns with the education system and kind of the continuing decline of public education in Washington State and the real lack of compassion from the education establishment to what's actually happening to the children who they supposedly care about, and turn them into guinea pigs for whatever social experiment program that the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction decides to put on them. So that's overlapped, I think, here a little bit. But ultimately, a lot of what this comes back to is the continuous effort to overpromise and underdeliver on almost every policy that's being offered by the feds or the state in regards to how they're dealing with this COVID pandemic, the endless, never-ending pandemic. And today it's the Delta variant or the Lambda variant, the Mu variant, or soon I'm guaranteed it's going to be the Omega Death variant that's coming around. And it'll be an endless excuse to just continually have the worst public policy they can possibly put together and use that as the excuse. So eventually, how many times can they keep moving the football and you're going to keep trying to kick it? Not very often. Now, the one thing that many people in Washington State specifically have said is, hey, if they want every one of us to get the jab, why don't they just send it out like they do our mail-in ballots and trust us, send it out in good faith. I'm sure we'll all fill out the paperwork and take those shots and send it back to them just like our voting. After all, if it's good enough for our voting, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with our voting in this state, mail-in ballots are perfect. There's never a flaw. There's never anything that goes wrong. It's almost the most perfect system ever invented for elections. Why can't it work for vaxes? Why can't we just take the shot that way? It's a good question, and it's one that the state should wonder why they just can't go down that road if they really believe mail-in voting works so well. Regardless, this is the flyer, and if you see the flyer promoting this event, I am listed as one of the speakers there. I'm not an important person, but I am one of the people getting up to talk, and I'm not emceeing it like I did this the event a couple weeks ago. I'm mostly interested in hearing from the other state workers there, from the firefighters and the Department of Corrections employees and the ferry workers again. There's a lot of them coming out of the woodwork, and they're not terribly happy about potentially losing their job and the threats that Inslee has made. We are living in strange times, and this is the world that we're in. So if you care about the future and you care about what's happening, you don't have to be a state worker. You can be working for one of the other companies that is also going through a similar process. This may be the biggest rally in the state of Washington, at least next month, and it's coming right. I said, like on that time, that if you don't have the first shot by the 3rd of October, you can't hit the deadline that the governor has assigned by October 18th. So assuming he sticks to his plan of cleaning house and getting rid of everybody who didn't get the jab, that's a critical date. That's why the date was chosen. And the future does belong to those who show up. So come on in, show up at the Capitol. There'll be a lot of people there. I would suggest trying to find parking, get there a little early if you can. And I would love to see you there, and let Inslee know what you think. It's the only way to do it. If you want to learn more, go to wethegovern.com. I do encourage you to subscribe to our email list and our website. You can also subscribe to this video channel. Share it with others. If you have friends that haven't seen anything I've done, I'm sure that it's being shadow banned right and left. So share it far and wide if you can. And just remember, also, if you feel like you want to support what We the Govern's doing, you can also do that down below. I share a link for that as well. And I just look forward to seeing you on October 3rd.